We are finally getting into round 11 here. Our players are just getting set up. There was a little bit of a delay between rounds 10 and 11 due to one of the matches going on a bit longer, but it's understandable at this stage in the tournament because of everything that is on the line here for our players. So we have Francesco and we have Daniele, and you can see Francesco's accomplishments very good. Top 8 in Malmo Regionals this season. He got the top 16 at the Global Challenge too as well, so the online tournament, really hard field, and top 16 there, great accomplishment. Liverpool top 16 earlier this season, so a really good run this season with a lot of top cut finishes, and then in 2022 the Milan special event top 32 finish for him.
Absolutely, and Daniele on the other side, no in-person accomplishments, but that doesn't count them out whatsoever, because you know, coming into this stage of the tournament, 8-2 is a credential all of its own, and that means that Daniele is definitely a player to be watching out for.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll be getting into the team information in just a moment, but I think both players at this stage are going to be all eyes on each other's team sheets at the moment.
Yeah, one of the great things about open team sheets as a format is that, you know, these players are able to, you know, see what options that the opponent has, and especially those terror types is a really big deal. To be able to know there's 18 options for every single Pokemon, so you know, you really do want to do the best that you can in exactly the matchup and the situation that you find yourself in. Yeah,
the terror typings, like we've mentioned before, do make such a difference in the variety of different options that you've got on your team to maybe throw your opponent off, maybe, you know, options that your opponent hasn't played against before, unexpected options that make it a little bit difficult to kind of prepare against, and an awkward kind of terror option for your team to deal with. I think that's the big thing that we'll be looking out for here.
Absolutely, as we see Francesco Iozzia's team on the field, that Chien-Pao Dragonite that's done so well so far in this event. We've seen it quite a bit, but a slightly different move set on this particular Dragonite, being that Dragon Dance, which I believe is what we saw in Malmo, actually preferring to, you know, boost its way up, and you know, it did so well, if I remember rightly, against Ivar in Malmo, where it was playing against a Squawkabilly to Dunsparce, a team that was fantastic to showcase. But talking about what we have here, the Iron Bundle with that Terra Grass is a very interesting option, and that Assault Vest Annihilate that Francesco really does like to play in this format.
Yeah, and the Assault Vest on the Annihilate, you know, you look at Annihilate, he is a very well-built, good stat distribution Pokemon, very defensive Pokemon anyway. You put that Assault Vest on it and it becomes even more difficult to deal with, and really nice item choice there. Obviously with that Fire Terror typing as well, it does sometimes force your hand where if you are kind of threatened by a potential Will-O-Wisp or something like that, you have to go for that Terastallization to keep that offensive pressure, to stop yourself being burned. But as we see, there is no there is a Will-O-Wisp. Sorry, Ben. I missed it on that Chi-Yu there. Not something you see too often on Chi-Yu, but a very nice utility there. So that is something you have to watch out for on that Annihilate if you are Francesco.
Definitely, and looking down the team list there, we see the Azumarill, which is a Pokemon again from a previous years, has done very well, but not seen too much in this particular format, but showing probably some really interesting things coming out. I mean, it's carrying the Assault Vest, it's going to be hitting hard with those powerful moves and backing it up with a little bit of the Aqua Jet, Grass Terror type as well, keeping a defensive option for that Azumarill too. And I really like to see Pokemon like that coming out in the field, because Azumarill, if you haven't seen it from past formats, its huge power ability is very impactful.
Yeah, I love Azumarill. I think as a Pokemon it's great. It's got that brilliant ability and huge power that boosts that attack even further, and with the Assault Vest on it, it just makes it very difficult to remove from the field, especially when you kind of combine that, like you say, with that Grass Terror typing. It has nice coverage as well with that water fairy, and it also has superpower as well, so it has that fighting coverage as well, but it'll also get access to priority in Aquajet, so it can kind of just skip ahead of anything that it might be worried about getting hit first, chipping down things like sashes as well, which is always a very useful Pokemon to have. The other thing to note on Daniele's team, it's something that we haven't really seen too much of, is the Brute Bonnet. You know, it's got the loaded dice here, so it's taking advantage of that item for that multi-target attack and Bullet Seed that can do a lot of damage. And we have seen a lot of Amoonguss this weekend, but we haven't really seen too much of the Paradox version of Amoonguss in that Brute Bonnet. No,
not at all. And, you know, one move I'd like to really call out there is the Clear Smog. It's kind of a Brute Bonnet that's on its way to becoming an Amoonguss there, so to speak, from its past Paradox form. But that's going to be doing a lot of work in some different matchups. Maybe going to be able to put a little bit of pressure on that Dragonite to stop it going for those Dragon Dances, or at least be able to, you know, counteract those boosts that Francesco can go for.
Yeah, and I think that you have to be aware that there is the safety goggles on the Arcanine, but outside of that, really, you're kind of... There's a lot of Pokemon that can be threatened by the Spore. Obviously, the Dragonite has got the lump, so you're going to have to burn through that before you're able to put it to sleep. But you do have some options, obviously, with the Chi-Yu, where you can Spore, Will-O-Wisp it. There are combinations to kind of slow things down, and with that nice Water Terra typing as well, it does give you a little bit of protection against those big kind of threats, and there doesn't seem to be any electric type oh, there is on the Annihilate there, so you have to watch out for that, of course, on the Annihilate, and then obviously the Freeze Dry from the Iron Bundle. But it's a nice Terra type in general going up against Francesco, but whether or not we'll see Daniele go for that or not, because there is a multitude of different options that he can utilize in this match.
Definitely, and you know, you call out the Thunder Punch on the Annihilate, and it's really something to touch base on here, because it's a move choice and a coverage choice that we don't really see too often. Assault Vest does afford the ability to get some of those coverage options in, and I really like Thunder Punch because of all of the Pokemon that opt for Terra Water in this format. There's like, we don't have Regieleki, we don't have Tapu Koko anymore, we don't have those really big electric type hard hitters. That makes Water type a really great defensive option for most trainers to be able to opt for, because all you have to do is cover those grass types.
Yeah, and that's it. And even then, there isn't really that many strong grass types in the format. You know, like we have seen earlier in the season, we had Meowscarada. It was very popular, but that's really dropped off. And when you even look at things like Amoonguss that are a grass type, it doesn't really carry a grass attack generally. So your water types, you're so right. You know, the Terra Water typing is such a good optimal pick defensively, and it allows Pokemon a lot of freedom in matches, whereas with the Thunder Punch coverage there on Annihilate, it does give a nice option to hit those Terra types if they do choose to go down that route. The other thing about the Assault Vest I really do like on the Annihilate as well, it really complements that Rage Fist, because the more the Annihilate gets hit, the more that Rage Fist is boosted, and with the Assault Vest, it does mean that you can kind of take a few more hits. It sponges up those hits with the Assault Vest a lot better, meaning that that Rage Fist becomes quite threatening quite quickly.
Very, very quickly. And of course, you know, the Assault Vest, it kind of, the way that I like to think of it is it makes all of those hit points worth a little bit more. And especially when you've got Amoonguss as a bit of a backup, going Pollen Puff to the side and recovering those hit points, that's going to make a big difference, as Daniele leading off this game one. Chi-Yu and Iron Bundle, Annihilate and Chen Pao coming out from Francesco.
Yeah, interesting leads there, but there is a little bit of a technical issue there, so the players are going to have to just set up again, and we'll be getting into the match very shortly, trainers at home.
Absolutely. It's worth noting here that these trainers aren't restricted to using the same Pokemon that they used in game, in the leads that we saw there. So we could be seeing something completely different coming out here, and I think that's one of the mind games that these players have to have. Some trainers, you know, they opt to just go for the same leads, and that's absolutely fine. But, you know, you have seen a little bit of a hint about what your opponent is thinking, and, you know, there is an opportunity to take advantage of that.
Yeah, of course, and I think that's maybe not the best scenario for some players that have like a set plan going into this game already. You've been sitting for a little while and you think, right, this is how I'm going to approach this, but now, your opponent might think, ooh, I didn't think they would lead like that, so I'm going to adjust for that. That's where the mind games come into it. Like you say, both players might end up just leading the same thing, but we could see a little bit of a variation going into this next match once it's set up.
Absolutely, but you know, looking at what Francesco did lead in that match, Shen Pao and the Chen Pao, putting a lot of pressure on Chi Yu and Iron Bundle. Of course, there is that icy wind on the Iron Bundle on Daniele's side of the field, so there's an option for a little bit of speed control with a follow-up from that Chi Yu. But the difficulty there would be that you're hitting the Annihilate with 2 hits potentially.
Yeah.
And that can be quite difficult because straight away you're powering up that Rage Fist.
That's the problem, I think, in that specific scenario, because with the Assault Vest there's not very much chance that you're going to be able to remove that Annihilate with 2 attacks. So yeah, do you have to really consider, are those 2 attacks worth potentially getting rid of the Shen Pao in that situation, for the sacrifice of elevating that Annihilate to a level where it's maybe a bit too much to kind of control from your side of the field, because the Chi Yu obviously does help in respect with its ability, the Beads of Ruin making their special attacking moves a bit stronger, but again, it's still not strong enough. And at the same time, the Shen Pao could just protect that turn 1 and think, right, well, we'll just let Annihilate get a few boosts onto this Rage Fist, and then we can go from there. And
of course, if it is an Icy Wind, that's going to proc the Defiant ability as well. So
yeah,
big risk, but potentially, you know, big reward. I really like how we've seen players play around Annihilate on stream over the last little while, because, you know, we've seen a lot of players just waiting and opting for, you know, hitting it when they need to and when it's definitely going to get a knockout. As we see the same leads coming out here from both trainers, unfortunately. Another little technical issue there. These traders not quite managing to get this battle started.
Yeah, and we will be trying, 3rd time lucky this time around. But it looks like both trainers are kind of set on their strategy going into this match with that Chen Pao and the Annihilate. But like you say, I think that's what makes the Annihilate and that Chen Pao a really strong lead into this match, because you've got the Chen Pao that is boosting the attacks of that Annihilate, obviously with its ability sort of Ruin, making it even more threatening. And like you say, you don't really want to give the Annihilate too much room in how you've expressed it. Other players have been approaching it. The problem is, if you deal with it in a certain way and you leave it alone, it's not a Pokemon you really want to give too much room to, because it will really disrupt your flow. It's going to start knocking things out, and you have to deal with it at some point. The Chi Yu does have access to Will-O-Wisp. Now that is a nice option, so I think if you get the burn onto it, but of course it's risky because of that fire terror typing. So if you fire off a Will-O-Wisp that turn 1 into it and it does terastallize, then you think, well, I've just wasted a turn, and probably not the best way to kind of approach turn 1. So there's a lot of mind games here.
And another mind game that could be in play here is, you know, do you predict that the terastallization is going to go in turn 1 into that Annihilate? Do you just go straight for the Hydro Pump into that Annihilate with the Iron Bundle, follow it up with a Dark Pulse from the Chi Yu? Dark Pulse would be, you know, neutrally effective regardless of whether the Annihilate goes for the Terra or not, but if it does go for Terra Fire to block that Will-O-Wisp, then gets a Hydro Pump, maybe it's enough to pick up the KO, and if it's not, it can only launch out 1 move before it's in range of another attack being able to knock it out from either the Iron Bundle or whatever is left remaining on the field.
I think that's probably the best way to deal with Annihilate, in my opinion anyway. I think you've just got to go on the offensive. You've not got to worry about boosting those Rage Fists. That's a secondary thing that you need to consider, really. I think if you've got the offensive pressure like you have with that Iron Bundle, like you said, it's risky always clicking into Hydro Pump, but I think you've got to go for the big attack in this situation, especially if it does terastallize as well. You are hitting it for super effective damage, of course. Has got the Assault Vest, but with that Chi Yu combination there, and also you're likely going to outspeed the Annihilate as well. So with that Dark Pulse, you've got the added benefit that you potentially could pick up a cheeky little flinch there, which would be huge in turn 1. So I think the coverage there between the Chi Yu and the Iron Bundle are really nice, between kind of covering that terastallization or not. But yeah, if it doesn't terastallize, it's probably unlikely that it will pick the knockup out.
Really unlikely.
Yeah, but you've got to have something in the back of that stage to come in and then think, right, well, if I can get it down to a certain point, I've got something in the back to come in and
kind of finish it off and make sure that it goes down that turn. Of course, when it does terastallize, it becomes capable of being hit by extreme speed, so maybe that's a little bit of an option there, or Aquajet from the Azumarill in Daniele's case. I think the other interesting point to make is how Daniele has trained his Fluttermane. Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu, because it is carrying that safety goggles, which means that it's not carrying the focus sash. And if that Chen Pao goes for a Sacred Sword to try and knock it out, I know that you can train a Chi-Yu to be able to take that hit with, as little as 1 HP remaining. And 1 HP is all that you need to get an attack off in that turn. So maybe you're trading a little bit of damage on the Chi-Yu to be able to try and remove the Annihilate or try to remove the Chen Pao from the field. But that could be a strong option as well, depending on the preparation that Daniele has had coming into this event.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, you look at the Terra type of that Chi-Yu, and it is a Ghost Terra type. Now, it is a little bit risky to go for that terrestrialization, but it is one of those terrestrialization options that you have in that turn 1 surprise factor, where you could almost say, well, is he going to go for the Sacred Sword here? Because if he is, I can terrestrialize, go for my Ghost typing. It's not the most optimal type to go for in front of Annihilate, but if it dodges you maybe a Sacred Sword that turn in, means that the Shen Pao isn't really doing anything, then it's probably worth it in that scenario, especially if you can get the trade-off there to remove the Annihilate from the field.
Exactly, and removing the Annihilate is got to be one of the top priorities here for Daniele as they go into this match. Francesco, of course, is no stranger to using this Annihilate in competition, and certainly at the high level, getting day 2 in the Malmo and getting right the way up to top 8. But we've seen quite a lot on stream, actually, Francesco, when he was able to bring that Annihilate. He also used U-turn quite effectively to pivot it around, maybe take 1 or 2 hits and pivot it out for later on in the match, where, made sure his opponent was using all of their resources, and then came back later with that very strong Rage Fist that was already boosted up.
Yeah, and I think in that specific scenario, you can really kind of see how effective Rage Fist can be if you are able to kind of utilize the Annihilate in a certain way.
Absolutely, as third time's the charm here. It's going to be the same leads yet again. We've been talking about it for a little while now. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out with that Chen Pao and Annihilate for Francesco, and Daniele leading out with that Chi-Yu and Iron Bundle.
We've had a little bit longer to talk about these leads than we regularly do, but we are going to get into it finally here. And we are going to see the Drain Punch go into that Chi-Yu, interestingly, from the Annihilate here. It is going to be interesting to see if that is what Francesco kind of locks in with here. But we are just going to see Protect first turn from this Iron Bundle.
A little bit more of a defensive play there, and a Protect coming out from the Chi-Yu as well. So Daniele trying to maybe scout out what his opponent is going for as the Sacred Sword launches into the Iron Bundles Protect from that Chen Pao. Drain Punch going into the Chi-Yu slot. So double fighting move coming out from Francesco, a little bit more on the offensive, especially with that Assault Vest from the Annihilate. Can't go for any defensive plays other than U-turn on yourself, I suppose, would have worked in that scenario, but not the greatest of moves next to a Focus Sash Chen Pao.
No, definitely not, and I think the nice thing there, you just see that Daniele just wants to take it a little bit slower here, just wants to, like you say, scout out what Francesco's planning to do, and I think not really dive in too quickly, take any big risks and lose something too early in this match.
Right, and I think that's really important when both trainers have got the opportunity to really think through all of the potential options for this turn 1. We've had time to talk about it, they've had time to think about it, and seeing what your opponent's going to be doing.
Huge miss from the Hydro Pump, from the Iron Bundle, as it does take a Sacred Sword from the Shen Pao here, and it takes some huge damage. The double up into that Annihilate was there. No flinch from that Dark Pulse as a Drain Punch comes out from the Annihilate into the Chi-Yu, picking up a knockout and recovering all of that damage done.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that Chi-Yu to go down that turn to a Drain Punch there. And what a call for Francesco, not going for that Terra Fire, just saying, my opponent's going to be thinking that I'm going to try to avoid that Will-O-Wisp. I'm actually not going to do that this turn, just going to play it a little bit safer and make sure I don't take too much damage from a Hydro Pump.
Yeah, exactly, and that Hydro Pump miss, so detrimental there for Daniele, and it's so costly as well. I don't know if it would have been enough, But the fact, like you mentioned, Francesco not going for that Terra type, not terrestrializing there, really paying off and making the numbers for him in his advantage right now, getting the knockout on that Chi-Yu.
And it's a terrestrialization coming out turn 2, and it looks like it's going to be that Fluttermane, yes, going for its Terra Fairy and trying to do as much damage as possible. Maybe thinking that Francesco is not going to go for the Terra on the Annihilate, or maybe just knowing that that's the best source of damage that he has right now and wanting to use it to its maximum effect.
But here we go. We are finally going to see the terrestrialization on the Annihilate. It is going to turn into that fire typing now to give it that resistance against those big threatening fairy type attacks from the Fluttermane. Iron Bundle just protecting going into this turn, as we have seen the Fluttermane terrestrialize and a Sucker Punch come out, but it does fail from that Shen Pao, and a Dazzling Gleam coming out from the Fluttermane, which will do good damage to Shen Pao, taking it down, activating that Focus Sash, and the Annihilate taking that very comfortably.
Like an absolute champ with that Assault Vest, and now we've had 2 hits on this Annihilate. This Rage Fist is boosted up to pretty astronomical levels there as it lands into that Fluttermane, picking up the KO. Not weak to the Rage Fist, but that doesn't matter anymore. Taking a couple of hits makes that Annihilate so strong.
Yeah, you can see how quickly Francesco's obtaining a huge advantage in this match with that Annihilate, really kind of snowballing in this match with the momentum here. The Rage Fist picking up the clean knockout onto that Fluttermane and wasting almost the terrestrialization, not getting any return. The Shen Pao obviously going down to its Focus Sash, but that's kind of fine. That returns all right in this situation. The Iron Bundle's really threatened now because of that Sucker Punch that the Shen Pao has. Right. So it has to be careful going into this last turn, and Daniele's options are pretty slim as the Iron Bundle goes for a double protect and gets it. I
do like that, trying for the double protect there, knowing that the Sucker Punch could in fact fail, and there's no switch out options there for Daniele. Rock Slide though following up after the Sucker Punch into that Great Tusk, going to be knocking out that Shen Pao, and the Annihilate goes for a flinch.
Huge flinch there, and I think, you know, getting that second protect off with the Iron Bundle, great there because it does protect you, but the flinch there is massive. It does a lot of damage to that Annihilate as well. Now the Great Tusk in a nice position. It is obviously choice off, but on the back end of that, Francesco coming in with that booster energy Iron Bundle that probably will outspeed that Great Tusk going into this next turn, and with the Icy Wind support, can be a little bit tricky to get the momentum kind of swing that Daniele was probably hoping for with this Pokemon.
And I think it really comes down here to how both of these Iron Bundles are trained, whether Daniele or Francesco has the faster one. If Francesco has the faster one, he can get a Freeze Dry off onto this Great Tusk, and with the Terra already used on the Fluttermane, won't be able to defend it from those powerful Ice-type attacks. If Daniele's goes off first, it's going to slow down that Iron Bundle, and this Choice Scarf Great Tusk is going to be able to go first and get another Rock Slide.
Hydro Pump coming out, and it does connect this time from the Iron Bundle into the Annihilate, and it finally goes down for Daniele. So tying the numbers up here, 2 Pokemon apiece going into this last few turns of this battle.
Absolutely close combat going into the Iron Bundle there. Maybe misread the Great Tusk's item choice there. It is in fact carrying the Focus Sash. Yeah, so you know, breaking the Focus Sash with that Sucker Punch on the Shen Pao, very relevant going into these final turns.
Yeah, and that does change the dynamic of this match completely, and it does then put a lot more reliance on which of these Iron Bundles can go first, can get that speed control to support their partnering Pokemon. Amoonguss coming in for Francesco is going to be a bit more disruptive than that offensive Great Tusk, which has just protected on Daniele's side of the field. It all comes down to this. The Iron Bundle is going to go first on Francesco's side into that protect on the Great Tusk, leaving the Iron Bundle on Daniele's side free to go for a big attack, but not enough to get the knockout on the Amoonguss, as it does go for a Pollen Puff into the Iron Bundle on Daniele's side and pick up the knockout, and it is now the Great Tusk against the Iron Bundle and Amoonguss, not looking really that good a situation for Daniele to close this matchup.
Not at all. I really enjoy when Amoonguss gets the opportunity to take a knockout there, because, you know, we see it being such a great supporter, putting Pokemon to sleep and, you know, going for those rage powders, healing up their partner Pokemon, of course, as well. But sometimes it's the little mushroom that could.
Yeah, and I know we've seen throughout this weekend how good Amoonguss has been. You know, it has, and like you said, it's always nice to see it picking up the final knockout, or the deciding knockout in a match there. The Great Tusk, with that Focus Sash, obviously not having the speed advantage, did make it a bit different in those end turns. I think I was looking at Francesco's Great Tusk, which he has a Great Tusk, and that one does have the, no, sorry. Just ignore me, Ben. I'm just
we've seen quite a lot of Scarf Great Tusks. We've got Scarf Great Tusk on the mind at the moment.
Don't know where the Scarf came from.
I'm sure that the Great Tusk on Daniele's side has great choice in neckwear, but not today. Just
not
carrying
today.
that Focus Sash. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Though it does make a massive difference, because even with an icy wind coming out from Daniele, it wouldn't have been able to make that Iron Bundle on Francesco's side of the field slower than the Great Tusk. But maybe an icy wind and a protect, followed by another icy wind if Francesco didn't go for one, could have been enough to put that Great Tusk in a more powerful position than it was in that end game. And certainly Amoonguss isn't going to appreciate an end game against a Great Tusk when all it has in its arsenal are Pollen Puff and Clear Smog to do damage. Yeah,
I think that's the thing. I think that's the impact of that booster energy as well. You're having to get 2 icy winds off essentially to put your Great Tusk in a kind of commanding position where it is able to do the work that you want it to do. I think the fact is the Annihilate kind of did enough in the early game for Francesco to kind of pave the way for him to really seal that game up pretty comfortably in the end. And I think that's the big thing for Daniele, where he's going to have to come into this game and have a better answer for the Annihilate going into this one, whether that's with the Azumarill or whether or not that's with the Great Tusk. That we are going to see some leads changed up here from both players. Daniele leading out with the Fluttermane and that Great Tusk, and Francesco leading out with the Amoonguss and the Dragonite. And
yeah, a really good lead here for Daniele, I think, more than anything else. Francesco trying to take advantage of the leads from game 1, maybe trying to get that Dragonite in a position where it can go for a Dragon Dance and boost itself up, make it faster than that Great Tusk, make it maybe faster than the Fluttermane on Daniele's side of the field. But Daniele leading in a position where there's the Rock Slide spread move available that's going to be super effective against that Dragonite, even when it goes for its Terra type. And of course that Fluttermane will be easily enough to, you know, make sure that that Dragonite has its multi-scale broken. So Amoonguss's redirection is not that strong, but both Pokemon on Daniele's side of the field are really fearing a Spore right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You've got to go for potentially breaking the multi-scale on the Dragonite to get that super effective attack onto it after it has Terrassalized here into that flying type. But you are hoping, if you go for that Rock Slide, that you do potentially flinch the Amoonguss, unless you go all in on it, like you're saying here, with a big Shadow Ball coming out from the Fluttermane, followed up by a headlong rush from that Great Tusk, and not even worrying about the Dragonite, just wanting to get rid of that one disruptive Pokemon that has been so influential throughout this tournament, the Amoonguss going down.
And it's not going to be picking up any knockouts this game. Terra Blast coming out from that Terra Flying Dragonite, one of my favorite moves on Dragonite to use, and it is enough to pick up that one-hit knockout on the Fluttermane. So a Pokemon down a piece, but I think it's really worth thinking about the fact that Francesco didn't get a Dragonite. You trade one Pokemon for one Pokemon, but you didn't get your boost. That Dragonite's still going to be susceptible to the Great Tusk here. And with that Focus Sash coming out, the Iron Bundle on Francesco's side of the field is going to want to be going for moves like Icy Wind to give it a little bit of speed advantage.
Yeah, and especially after that headlong rush from the Great Tusk here, of course, it is going to be more susceptible to these offensive kind of moves from the Dragonite. Dragonite's still got its multi-scale intact, like you mentioned, and I think that's a big thing. The Iron Bundle on the opposing side of the field, Daniel's side of the field, can obviously break that, but if you are kind of winning the speed tie in this situation with your own Iron Bundle, you don't really need to worry about that. And the Dragonite as well potentially could just go for a Dragon Dance to overcome that, or just go for a straight up attack here. We are going to see actually Francesco just protect his Iron Bundle this turn, and the Freeze Dry coming straight out from the Iron Bundle on Daniele's side of the field. But that multi-scale, you can see how effective that is, and a follow-up from the Rock Slide on the Great Tusk here. Probably enough to survive this, just about. And returning with a big stomping tantrum into that Iron Bundle, not doing too much damage here. And the Dragonite looking a little bit vulnerable going into this next turn.
Very much so. Definitely going to have to take advantage of that extreme speed if it wants to act in this turn, other than, you know, the capability of it, of course, to be switching out. And I'd definitely, in Francesco's position, be looking to try to break that focus sash onto the Great Tusk on Daniele's side of the field. But extreme speed going into that Iron Bundle, not enough to pick up the KO there. An Iron Bundle retaliating with a Freeze Dry, picking up the knockout onto that Dragonite.
Yeah, and going down and leaving the Iron Bundle on Francesco's side, going for a Freeze Dry, and it is going to go into the opposing Iron Bundle on Daniele's side to pick up the knockout, just ignoring that Great Tusk at the moment.
Yeah, and I quite like that play to some level, but you know, you can't leave that Iron Bundle alone to just do whatever it wants. Maybe Francesco predicting a protect coming out from the Great Tusk while it was a little bit more under threat and targeting down that Iron Bundle instead. But because of that, Daniele gets to make a great call there and knock out the Iron Bundle. And now Chen Pao can only target one Pokemon at the time. Based on what we saw in Game 1, that Chen Pao is probably going to be able to knock out that Chi-Yu in one hit. But a Pokemon that it's not going to be able to knock out in one is that Great Tusk.
Yeah, and it's still got its Focus Sash intact as well. That hasn't been broken. So we do see the forfeit here from Francesco, and Daniele tying this matchup, taking us to a Game 3. That was a very fast-paced game, that one, Ben.
Yeah, all of the turns leading to just playing as offensively as possible, and Daniele doing very well there to target properly, getting that Shadow Ball followed up with that headlong rush into the Amoonguss that stops Francesco from being able to get the Rage Powders going and support that Dragonite, and then being able to just launch that close combat in the end game into that Iron Bundle without even losing the Focus Sash. I mean, that's exactly what every player is hoped for in those sort of situations.
Yeah, I think maybe if you were Francesco in that situation, you were probably suspecting a Protect to come out from the Great Tusk. Daniele, you know, identifying that and just saying, well, I'm not going to Protect here. I'm going to go for these attacks. If you don't target into my Great Tusk, I'm just going to punish you for that. And he went through a number of turns where there was opportunities to break that Focus Sash and even knock it out. You could have went for the Icy Wind and the Terra Flying from the Terrestrialized Dragonite to knock it out, but just never decided to go for that. Didn't want to commit into that slot because of the Protect there, and that kind of that was the big thing. Daniele taking advantage of that. Francesco getting a little bit caught out, not bringing the Annihilate in this game, changing things up. Didn't quite work out for him like he probably wanted it to, but the adjustment by Daniele, bringing that Great Tusk, identifying that that is going to be a really strong Pokemon against the majority of things on Francesco's team, really well played. And I think that turn one, doubling into the Amoonguss, was huge. Knowing that there's no Protect there, I think really prioritizing that, saying, well, I might lose my Fluttermane this turn, but it's worth it, because if I get rid of the Amoonguss, the disruptive, supportive Pokemon here, then I can just go on a little bit of a run after this, and kind of played out exactly like that for Daniele. Yeah,
with no ability for that Amoonguss to do its usual shenanigans whatsoever. And it's a nice call out there that, yeah, Francesco didn't bring the Annihilate at all in Game 2. And I think, you know, Francesco probably going into Game 2 thinking Annihilate was the star in Game 1. I know that Daniele's going to be really heavily adjusting for that going into Game 2, so I'm going to adjust my strategy as well and use some of the other threats that I have available to me to, you know, put a different type of pressure and take advantage of the different Pokemon Daniele has to bring.
Yeah, so if you're going into this next game, Ben, and you're Francesco off that last round, what are you going to go back to the Annihilate, do you think, as your options here, and maybe have Iron Bundle as a partner to that to support in case that Great Tusk comes out? Because it feels like Daniele probably will go with that Great Tusk again, with how effective it was in that first game. I
think you've got to, if you're Francesco, be playing to knock out that Great Tusk and have an Annihilate in the back. that's how I'd be maybe approaching this matchup, where you've got that assault vest, right? You want to be able to knock out the big physical threats. You want to be able to go for Terra Fire against something like a Fluttermane on Daniele's side of the field without worrying too much about all of the damage that it's doing. And we saw how much that Raid Fish did in game 1.
Yeah.
So I really like the Amoonguss Dragonite lead because it gives you some space. It gives you the ability to Dragon Dance. Dragonite gives you the ability to Dragonite.
I like that, though. Gives you the ability to Dragonite.
Dragonite up. And yeah, so getting those Dragon Dance puts a lot of pressure onto the field, and maybe that's not great when you're staring down an Iron Bundle, but if you're putting some holes into your opponent's team, the Annihilate can pick up the slack later on in the match.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I think you're completely right about that. You really are wary about that Great Tusks if you are going down an Annihilate route.
Yes.
And you really want to remove that from the field as soon as possible, because as soon as you do, like you say, that physical threat to you is gone, and for the majority of the other things on the team, you've got the Assault Vest to kind of support you in that aspect, that ratio of things, so you're not really too worried about it. And it does depend, of course, what Daniele goes with here. He could also bring something like the Azumarill to kind of back up that Great Tusk in the back, another physical attacker. But like the basic premise of what you're saying, I think leading out with not the Annihilate and using it as a late game to come in, because it's a really tricky Pokemon to deal with. We saw in that game 1 how well Francesco kind of piloted it, supported it, and it really made it difficult for Daniele to kind of get a footing in that match. If he can replicate that, but maybe turn the tables and not lead out with it, bring it later, and resist going for a Terastallization so early, then I think that might be a good way for him to kind of approach this from that angle to clinch the win. But all credit to Daniele, he's adjusted in that game 2. He's probably feeling good going into this game 3, knows what the better Pokemon to bring in this matchup are now, and it's going to be a great match for us to finish off with in this round 11, as we see Daniele lead off with the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu, and the Iron Bundle and the Dragonite out for Francesco.
3 games, 3 different leads coming out here for both players, just really changing up their strategies more and more as the games go on. And I really like this lead coming out from Francesco with the Iron Bundle getting the ability to go for those Icy Winds. It means that you don't have to go straight for the Dragon Dance with the Dragonite to be able to Dragonite up and be faster than your opponent. Instead, you can use the speed control that Iron Bundle affords you and go straight on the offensive with the Terra Blast coming out here. And that's what I think Daniele really has to adjust to. But looking at his team, there's not too many things that he wants to be switching into that Terra Flying.
No, not at all. And I think once you do Terastallize or commit to that Terastallization with the Dragonite, you've got to be very wary about the power of that Terra Blast, because the Dragonite, as we know, hits extremely hard. It has got the Lumberry, so not the choice like some other trainers have got with the Choice Band and things like that. But we are going to see actually the Chi-Yu go for its Terastallization here into that Terra Ghost type, and we are following that up with another Terastallization on Francesco's side, going for that flying Terra-type Dragonite. So likely going to see a Terra Blast fired out from this Pokemon, and neither the Fluttermane or the Chi-Yu are going to want to take this, especially if it's supported by an Icy Wind.
But it's the Hydro Pump, and it's the Chi-Yu that's going to be able to take that with the Terra Ghost, removing its resistance to the Water type. And Dazzling Gleam following up is enough to pick up the KO on this Iron Bundle.
That's a huge miss with the Heat Wave from the Chi-Yu. After the multi-scale was broken, the Dragonite now returning in retaliation with the Terra Blast. Going to be into that Fluttermane and pick up a huge knockout. What a turn of events, Ben.
How to start a game 3 in an explosive fashion there. Whether or not the Heat Wave would have connected, it would have done a lot of damage in single target as well, because that Dragonite was the only Pokemon left on the field after that Icy Wind. Whether or not the Heat Wave would have killed, we won't, or knocked out the Dragonite, we won't know now. But Chien-Pao and Iron Bundle join the field for Francesco and Daniele.
Yeah, and we do see that booster energy activate on that Iron Bundle, as it is going to be in a position to fire off an Icy Wind. Speed control support that Chi-Yu, so it is able to get an attack off, potentially if that Icy Wind does land onto the Dragonite and the Chien-Pao. The extreme speed on the Dragonite not going to be effective into that Chi-Yu either, because of that Ghost Terastallization And when we first initially saw that, you thought, is that the right choice? The extreme speed into the iron bundle.
And it's
not
a sucker
enough.
punch coming out onto the iron bundle is enough to pick up the knockout, so no protects this time. And Francesco calling that perfectly. Will-O-Wisp coming out onto this Chen Pao, going to break the focus sash, going to lower the damage that it's going to do later on in the match, but I feel like it's done exactly what it needed to do.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there was you don't want to risk going for an attack potentially when there is the sucker punch threat from that Chen Pao. You can really catch it off with that Will-O-Wisp, but removing the iron bundle for Francesco is a huge play here. Now the Great Tusk going to hit the field, and it has got its focus sash intact, but it is going to be susceptible to that double up again from the combination of sucker punch, but it's going to be weak this time because of that burn from the Chi-Yu and also the extreme speed from that Dragonite.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, Great Tusk is probably going to be able to, you know, hang on this turn, but there is that Amoonguss in the back that we know that Francesco has the option to switch in. These are the last Pokemon that Daniele has in his arsenal here, coming into the later stage of this game. As Chen Pao going to be retreating, not going to be wanting to go down this turn. It's the Amoonguss that's going to be leading the way.
And the Dog Pulse coming out from the Chi-Yu into the Dragonite, not enough, but followed up by the Rock Slide into that Dragonite, picking up the knockout and doing some nice chip damage to that Amoonguss along the way.
Absolutely, and now with the Chen Pao coming back onto the field for Francesco, the big question I've got is, will that Terra Ghost come back to hurt you in the end game? Because the Chi-Yu, if it gets a Heat Wave off, as well as a move from the Great Tusk, because we've got to remember that that Amoonguss is carrying the Occa Berry, so will not be going down to a Heat Wave in this situation. You've got to, there's so many mind games here, but does that Sucker Punch?
We see a Rage Powder come out from the Amoonguss. It is going to try and pull all the attention to its side of the field. The Sucker Punch coming out from the Chen Pao, it does fail into that Chi-Yu, as we see a Will-O-Wisp headed into that Amoonguss slot, but it does miss, leaving the Great Tusk to fire for close combat and not doing very much damage, protecting that Chen Pao for one more turn.
One more turn indeed, but dropping those defenses down, and Chen Pao would be definitely appreciating this. I wouldn't be surprised now if the Great Tusk was to hit knocked out by the Chen Pao's Ice Spinner, even though it is burned. But no Sucker Punch coming out onto that Chi-Yu. Probably Francesco thinking that it is enough to pick up the KO, but not going to be this time. The Chen Pao going for the protect.
Yeah, and we are going to see the Great Tusk go, the Chi-Yu go for that Heat Wave there, and it is going to be hitting into that Occa Berry on the Amoonguss. But like you say, going to help take that a lot better going into this turn. And the Amoonguss hanging on here barely, as we are going to see the headlong rush from that Great Tusk pick up the knockout. And that is a huge swing of momentum here for Daniele going into this last turn, as he was going for the protect, trying to fish out something with that Amoonguss and not bait in with that Sucker Punch once again.
But Daniele not falling for it whatsoever, just knowing that that Amoonguss does not carry protect, isn't going to be able to isn't going to be able to protect itself from any damage going on, and does correctly target into the Amoonguss. Daniele taking that game in a really commanding fashion after such an explosive turn one, turn two. I really thought that Francesco was in the driving seat, but the way that Daniele brought it back, using that Great Tusk that he used in Game 2 with that Focus Sash, was so strong. And what a way to showcase what Great Tusk is capable of doing in this format.
Yeah, and it really was the kind of the difference maker for Daniele in this game. As soon as he brought it, as soon as he started utilizing it in this match, it really made such a difference. I mean, even in that Game 1, when he did bring it in, he wasn't really able to get the momentum swing that he wanted with it, like we saw in Game 2, but it was still so effective. And I think it was probably that moment in Game 1 where he thought, okay, this Rock Slide is doing some work, and he was able to preserve that Focus Sash after that point really nicely in Game 2, where it was just left alone, and he wasn't really going for the protects that you maybe thought, it would make sense to protect it here because it's a little bit of risk, but he was committed to saying, okay, I need to bring this match back, I'm going to have to risk something, I'm going to be brave, I'm going to be bold with my Great Tusk, and it really paid off. And then the adjustment going into that Game 3 was just incredible. And like when the match started, we saw the terrestrialization on the Chi-Yu, and you think, is this the best? Is this the best
choice
here? Because it doesn't feel like it is right now. But it was completely.
Totally.
Swung the match completely in his favour. And the way he played that end game as well, once he got the Great Tusk in, and not really allowing the Shen Pao to get any momentum like you normally see it doing when it comes onto the battlefield, was just incredible to see, and what a way to end the match.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is the call-out. Bold is really the way that Daniele played that match, and sometimes, especially with the extra leeway that Focus Sash gives you, you can make those sort of more bold plays. It's a way that you can have a little bit of insurance, because you know that your Pokemons aren't going down in one hit, and you can definitely take advantage of that. But we're going to be going into a short break. The players are ready and waiting for the next round already, so unfortunately not going to have the opportunity to hear from Daniele, but we'll catch up with him backstage, I'm sure, and give you a little bit of an update on what he's thinking later on. But we're, as I said, going to be going into a short break now. We'll be back with round 12.